Okay, hello and welcome out there in Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and the P3 Healthpreneurs space. I'm Velyn Hawkins. I'm your host, and we are in another episode of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. Welcome. If you've ever wanted to know the truth, it's going to be spoken here. So kick back or pull up a chair to the table and grab your pen and a notepad. Be in the conversation with us. Comment below the video. And we're going to be talking today about getting your brain in gear and accelerating your thinking, the art of protecting your brain for the future, with amazing guest, JAYNE Reynolds. Now, let me tell you a little bit about JAYNE. She is, like I said, amazing, but even more than that, JAYNE is the CEO of the Abundant Life Nutrition and Wellness Center. And just 1 second while I find my notes really quickly. Okay, there we go. She's got an amazing bio, and I want you to hear this because not everyone that I get to interview is actually a board certified holistic nutritionist. And JAYNE helps clients to experience increased energy, mental focus, and peace of mind. She's committed to your wellness and to the wellness of the planet. She's passionate about helping restore health, reduce stress, and rediscover joy, especially when you know that God created our bodies and the nutrients that support our health. Progress begins when you pair the nutrients that He created with our specific needs. JAYNE uses holistic nutrition to help people experience increased energy, mental focus, peace of mind, so that they can be their most vibrant and resilient selves. I love the fact that she actually is one who really believes that God designed us and that because of that, we matter. And she's taken on the mantle of helping to educate people to commit to the lifestyles that help us live healthy, stay healthy, and create freedom, vibrance, and resilience. So, with all of that being said, JAYNE, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Velyn. I should have you do my bio every time it needs to be done. That was very kind. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. What you do is so important in the world. And the goal of the show, my goal in life, is to help healthpreneurs to have a bigger voice and be able to share from their passion and purpose and expertise that which is going to help more people out there who need us.
Yes.
So thank you for doing your work.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little more about you. Let's just jump into this. Tell us about your journey towards this space of focusing on health and in particular, brain health.
Yeah, it's not a field that everybody gets into. You run into a lot of people who are helping others with things like diabetes or kidney health or heart health. And I think for most of us, the journey into wherever we find our niche is where we began ourselves, right? We had some struggle, some journey that we went through that we overcame, and that led us to where we are today. Because the joy of going through a very difficult journey is when we come out the other side and realize that we went through that for the benefit of other people so that we can help them in some way, shape, or form. And that was my story. I dealt with anxiety and depression for years and years. I had a particularly poor birthing experience with my first child, and I had an E. coli infection after she was born, and they gave me rounds and rounds of antibiotics that saved my life, but they destroyed my gut health. And in doing so, started a spiral into depression and anxiety that I didn't understand back then. And it doesn't sound like so long ago. It's only 24 years, but we didn't know better then about reseeding the gut with probiotics and taking care of our health. I think we left the hospital and my celebration moment was to stop by McDonald's on the way home. So I literally was living this life that doesn't even sound familiar to me anymore. But it made me very, very sick. And I had this it got to the point where I had this unrelenting anxiety that really just kind of stripped away who I was. It left me as a shell of a woman who was not able to care for my family, was not a very good spouse. I couldn't work because I was having anxiety attacks all the time. And I did pursue help from the conventional world and I got a little bit of it, but I just ended up on medication that really felt like it was numbing me and not really helping me. I was still having anxiety attacks. So I pursued help in the naturopathic realm, and that's where I started to see real shifts in my health. And then as I was able to get back to work, I started working with seniors. And so I spent 12 years working with seniors and watching what happens when we don't take care of our health. You can see very, very clearly when somebody has really invested in their health for their lifetime and those that have kind of let things go and where things end up. And so dealing with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, dementia, stroke on a regular basis, diabetes, those were all normal parts of our day and at the place where I worked. And it's really got me thinking that we could probably do an awful lot to help prevent those things from happening. That's not a normal part of our aging process. And so my heart and passion is helping people not just to feel better emotionally, but to protect their brains. Your brain is the command center of your entire body. So why would you've only got one, don't waste it, don't screw it up, take care of it so that you have it when you're 83 and 85 and 90 and 95, because we're living longer. And we want a quality of life, not just quantity of life at that point.
Amazing. Yes, you're so right. Quality plus quantity is
Yes.
the real goal.
Yes.
And I love your story, not so much the side of suffering, but the going through and getting through and knowing that, you know, with what you found for yourself, you're now doing what you do to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, because mental illness is such a huge awakening for some people in this day and time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, decades ago, you almost couldn't even speak the words mental illness, whether you were referring to someone else or you were trying to express that you knew something was off kilter for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And now, you know, we're looking at hearing more mental health conversation. But in your opinion, what really defines a healthy brain?
Yeah, and I think you actually touched on a really good point, because back then, years and years ago, we didn't talk about it because we were afraid of what the consequences were if we did discuss it. It often meant, you know, being locked up in a sanitarium or sent away to a mental health place. And when I first started dealing with those problems, that was really a legitimate concern that I had when I was seeking help. I was like, what is this going to end up looking like? And so I'm really glad it's a conversation that we can have more openly now, because we understand there are so many different causes behind what happens to our brains. And so many of those are adjustable or treatable without, you know, going to any extreme. So you asked me what my opinion of a healthy brain is. None of us actually really have a healthy brain. Dr. Amen did he needed some baseline people to kind of have this ideal standard for his SPECT scans. So he went looking for them and he found it, I think in the hundreds of thousands of people he interviewed, he ended up with like 60 healthy brains. It's very difficult. Most of us have something that isn't functioning on some level. So, but to me, a healthy brain is one that can think calmly and clearly and rationally to make decisions in the situations that we face. It's one that helps us to maintain emotional stability when we're facing difficult circumstances. It's one that communicates effectively with the rest of our body as well. It isn't misfiring with regards to something like muscle movement, which we see in Parkinson's disease or epilepsy. And then it's getting all the information and the nutrients that it needs from the other way around as well. So it's not just head down, it's body up, right? So we need thyroid hormones, sex hormones affect how our brain functions. We need oxygen. Our brain is so oxygen hungry. If we're not getting those nutrients to our brain, it's not functioning healthily. It's one that's free from environmental toxins. It's free from infection, especially gingival infection from our mouths. Like if we don't have clean mouths, we can easily get infection in our brains. And that's seen in Alzheimer's patients later in life. So I think it's all of those pieces. It's being able to remember and recall the important details in life. And to be able to keep functioning independently, because when we lose those functions, we have to give up some of our independence. So to me, it's maintaining an independent lifestyle because our brain's still working the way that it's supposed to. And we remember the basics, like what we're supposed to use toothpaste for and when it's safe to cross the road. So yeah, I know that's the extreme, but that's what we're trying to prevent from happening later on. And perfection isn't always attainable, but there's a lot we can do to alleviate the things that we've got going on.
Oh my gosh, that was so well defined. Thank you for that. And you're right. There is so much that we can do to ensure our brain health. And I love that because we're going to be talking about some of that.
Good.
And as I'm thinking about that, things that we can do, let's talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about what are some of the common causes of brain dysfunction, brain fog, forgetfulness. You mentioned a few of them. Even, losing one's train of thought. I mean, what are some common causes of those things happening?
Yeah, so one of the there's a few. So if you'll give me just a minute to go over those things, one of the first and biggest is inflammation in the body. And we see this all the time. We don't even realize how inflamed most of us are. We just put down things like, oh, it's normal arthritic pain when I'm 45. It's normal, bloating and swelling, and my heart isn't great. These things we think of that are normal parts of aging that are really just our bodies trying to tell us that they're in this incredibly inflamed state. And so inflammation is something that happens normally. If you get an infection, you want inflammation. You want that. Say I cut my finger, and then it starts getting inflamed and red and hot and swollen, then that's the brain's signal to send the right nutrients to this place to begin the healing process. And then an anti-inflammatory process kicks in afterwards. It takes all that inflammation out, and then you're left with just the scar from the cut that you got from before. So that's normal. What happens in our society is we're exposed to so many things that leave us in this perpetual state of inflammation that we can't turn down. And when that inflammation kicks off and gets going, it creates a lot of amyloid in the body. And if you know anything about Alzheimer's disease, you know that part of the brain dysfunction is happening because of this amyloid in the brain. And so that inflammation is contributing to that through our whole lifetime. So if you can get your inflammation under control, that's going to help with your brain. There was a study that showed too that rats who were fed a diet that was high in sugar had really chronically inflamed brains. So your body, your brain is creating this response, this inflammation response when it's being attacked by all these things that it doesn't know what to do with. It's trying to protect your brain. And when it does those things, whether it's an infection, too much sugar, then your brain produces that level of amyloid, and the problem is it doesn't get cleared out from the brain, and it ends up killing the synapses that your brain is trying to protect. So that's one of the big reasons that we have. Candida is another major problem. That happens. It's a yeast that's inside the body. It's a normal part of our body. We need some, right? Like so many things in our life, in our bodies, we're trying to achieve homeostasis all the time. We need balance of all these different things. So even when I had my E. coli infection, right, we are supposed to have some E. coli bacteria inside our body. It's necessary. But when it overgrows or gets out of control, then it starts causing problems. And that's the same with this yeast. And it shows up when we have too much stress in our lives, when we have even one round of antibiotics can cause it to go crazy, high sugar intake, and our diets are so ridiculously high in sugar, we don't even think about it anymore, but it's horrendous. So whenever those things are present in the body, Candida can overgrow. And there have been studies done showing, again, in mice, but the Candida, when it was injected into their bloodstream, it crossed the blood-brain barrier and set itself up for this state of inflammation that looked like the earliest stages of Alzheimer's. So we know that Candida can cause a lot of brain fog, a lot of forgetfulness, and fogginess for our clients that we're talking to. So that's one of the things we look for when we're working with somebody. Toxic exposure. I'm at the place where my body's pretty clean. We just went away on vacation. We stayed in a delightful little Airbnb, and everything in the place had been hosed down in like Gain laundry detergent and Febreze fabrics, you know, scentsy smells. And first thing we do is open all the windows and vent all that stuff out. I did several loads of washing to try and just get all those fragrances out, because those toxins are so overwhelming. They can affect our ability to think and function as well. I talked a little bit about infections with the gums, but also like Lyme, and that has its own parasites, not parasites, it has like Babesia and spirochete bacteria that end up in the brain. And then we talked a little bit about oxygen and how your brain is hungry for oxygen. And so if you're not getting enough, especially with sleep apnea, you know, we get to the place where we've gained so much weight, we're not sleeping well at night, our sinuses are all blocked off by our weight problem, and in our throats and in our sinus cavities, and then we stop breathing during the night, and we're not getting enough oxygen to the brain while we sleep. And that's such a critical time, because we are our body is cleaning up the amyloid plaques while we sleep. So if we're not getting restful sleep, then that can deprive the blood flow to the brain, and that oxygen deprivation is really detrimental. So yeah,
Wow.
Those are the few things.
What a great list of a few things. And I think, again, you know, people see people with sleep apnea so often,
Yeah,
that it kind of gets out of your mind that there's a root cause to it, that dealing with the root cause could correct it.
mm-hmm.
And, you know, you mentioned it, obesity is a cause of so much in the way of inflammation and diabetes, and all of these secondary, and people don't see them as secondary. You know, they don't see obesity as a cause of these things. They see these things as the primary. And it's knowing this type of information, I think, arms people with so much more to be able to deal, and not just deal, but rectify some of their own issues. Not enough oxygen to the brain. And we've heard stories of people just, you know, suffocating in their sleep because of that. And so, you know, I say all of this to hopefully have someone to hear that if any of this is impacting you, you've got to understand that there is a way to control it, to decrease it, to eliminate it. And we're here to share the information that it's not in pills, it's not in surgery. And while there is a place for those things, it's not necessarily in our daily lives. And so there are things that we can do to take responsibility for our lives. And I love that you shared that.
Yeah. Oof. Well, and I wanted to touch on that bit you said for a moment there that there is, a place for some of that. And I want to be really clear as we're talking about these things. I took medication for a good long season in my life, and it wasn't the perfect fit for me. But there are times when medication is necessary, especially for those who are dealing with anxiety and depression, especially where their health is like in a crucial point and in a jeopardy point, because that's where I was at. And then as you get that under control, get that stabilized for the moment, and then work on addressing the health issues and the underlying causes, so you can get to the point where you're able to step away from the medications if you want to, and if it's appropriate for you. It is necessary for some people, and I would never get on here and say that not everybody needs it. We do need to make some changes, but there are folks that really do need and benefit from being on a medication.
I totally agree. And thank you for the added clarification there, because again, I think with people having that kind of information, they know how to move forward responsibly in, improving their own health, improving the health of their family members, children. One of the biggest things that I heard in the last year was the statistics are showing that children, this is the first generation of children who will not outlive their parents. And I'm thinking, how does that happen? How do we allow that to happen when we know that that's the prediction? How do we offset that prediction? And it is in learning this information and learning what a healthy lifestyle, what a healthy brain, what a healthy gut looks like and means to you and your family. And then, I wanted to ask you also, is there a connection between exercise and food and lifestyle and brain health a little more than what we've just spoken about?
Oh, okay. Absolutely. And we know that there are things that happen through no fault of our own, right? Sometimes you can't avoid the car accident that causes the traumatic brain injury. There's just no way around it. So there's definitely damage that takes place that we are out of control of. But more often than not, for the larger percentage of cases, they are the decisions that we make every single day with our nutrition, with our lifestyle, that impact our brain in the long run. So the decisions that we make, they're incremental, they're little bits every single day, but they mount up. And by the time you're 40, 50, and 60, you're starting to pay for the decisions you made when you were 20 and 30. If I could get hold of every 20-year-old and give them a good shake and say, hey, I need to talk to you about what your brain could look like, 20 years from now if you don't take care of it today. So definitely there are lifestyle choices that we can make a change on. And one of the things that you just talked about, kids with ADHD, or kids who are dealing with depression and anxiety, or kids who aren't going to live longer than us. And it's so much of our lifestyles. I just told you before we got started, I have 3 kids who were born 13 months apart. I had twins. Life was very, very busy. I worked full time. They were in school, they had their extracurricular programs. And so the temptation is to lean into the things that are quick, that are easy, that seem convenient, but they're actually robbing us of our ability, because we end up being so to function later and to have control. I see little kids who are filled up on sugar and candy and never touch a vegetable, and and then they're dealing with this chronic overload of ADHD, and they can't focus and they can't get their brains under control. And it's because we're pouring in all these little toxic chemicals that overloads and overstimulates their brains, and they just physically can't even calm down because their body is just so overstimulated. So there's things we can do that absolutely help us. I touched on the nutritional deficiency piece, and that's what I wanted to just kind of talk about a little bit, is the things that we want to avoid or we're missing out on, because I know we're going to talk about the things we want to put in a few minutes. But the nutritional deficiencies, we talk about those situations where we're eating these convenience foods, they don't have any fiber in them. And fiber is such an amazing plant tool that is used for helping us to grab hold of toxins and infection and the things that our body doesn't want and can't use, and it carries them out. And we just had a conversation with a client just this last week where they said, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I'm going to the bathroom once or twice a day now. And before that, sometimes it was 2 weeks between bowel movements. And I'm going in my head, how did we get to the place where we feel like this is kind of a normal thing for our bodies? It's not. We need to clear those toxins out. So lack of fiber helps us to hang on to all the junk that's hurting our bodies. We know that vitamin D is extremely crucial for brain function. B1, we know is B1 gets flushed out if we drink a lot, and then we end up with alcohol-induced dementia in older age because we're lacking that vitamin B1. B12 is important for brain health. Zinc and copper need to be in the right ratio with one another, and if it's not, all of those things are associated with cognitive decline. We touched a little bit on having a healthy belly, and that's why I got so sick. The antibiotics I took decimated not only the good bacteria in my gut, but also the bad bacteria, which was supposed to. And so I ended up just depleted. And what I didn't know then, but I know now, is that 60 to 70% of your serotonin and your dopamine, which are your happy, pleasure and reward, feel-good neurotransmitters, are made in your digestive tract by your bacteria. So if you don't have them, then you're going to spiral into depression. And what helps us to have those good bacteria? Well, fermented foods and high fiber diets and eating a rainbow of variety of foods. So instead of all these mono diets, if you're walking up and down the grocery aisle, the packages that you're pulling off, if you just take a minute, take 5 minutes, go to the grocery store, walk up and down the center aisles and pull those boxes off and look at the ingredient labels, you're going to see their wheat, their soy, their dairy, and their sugar, and their corn. Those are like the 5 top ingredients in all of our products. We don't have variety in our diet anymore to help fund that good bacteria that we need in our gut. And then we do not have enough healthy fish oils or omega-3s in our diets. Our omega-3s and omega-6s work. One turns on inflammation and one, it can also turn it off. But once it turns into an inflammatory fat, it's just inflammatory. You can't get it to turn it back off again. Omega-3s are our anti-inflammatory fats. And we have a diet, corn chips, potato chips, fried foods, all of these things that are cooked in oils, those things, trans fats, they all contribute to inflammation in the body. And we don't eat nearly enough omega-3, whether that's from our fish oils or from flaxseed oil or from walnuts or chia seeds. We don't get enough of that omega-3 to turn off this constant barrage of inflammation that's going on inside our bodies. So those are some of the nutritional deficiencies that we have going on. And then we talked a little bit about diets that are high in sugars and trans fats. But I also wanted to talk about gluten for a second. Most of the clients that I have that come through my office, when we do food sensitivity testing, they don't have celiac disease, but they are incredibly sensitive to gluten and the effects that it has on their body and the way that it inflames their bodies. And it's simply a matter that the wheat that we eat today is a hybridized wheat. It is not the ancient wheat that we used to eat. And so we know gluten makes things light and fluffy and it holds things together. And we've bred these things, the wheat, to have high quantities of gluten in it. And our bodies just don't like it. And it creates this excessive amount of inflammation. And I've seen gluten sensitivities and dairy sensitivities cause people to have extreme suicidal ideations and to deal with post-traumatic stress, flashbacks. And when we took those food sensitivities out, it reduced their PTSD moments, but it also, I've seen it completely eradicate suicidal ideations by just taking those food sensitivities out. So those are things that we need to address when we're looking at the things that impact us negatively for our diet and lifestyle.
That is amazing. I am at a loss of words to comment on that. Wow. Thank you for that. And, to add to what you said, let's talk a little bit about exercise,
Yes.
the importance of exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to move your body. And this comes from a person who doesn't like moving her body. So hear me, this is like one of the things that I constantly have to work on. I went back for my walk at the park yesterday and came home with 16 mosquito bites. And I was like, okay, well, that wasn't any fun. Like, I don't want to go for my walk anymore. So then I have to be back at the gym where I can work out indoors and not get chewed up by mosquitoes, right? I have to have an option. The reason it's so important is because our brains are oxygen hungry and they are nutrient dependent. And the only way you can get that stuff up into your brain is to get your blood pumping through your body. And it's going to get and deliver all of those nutrients to your brain. And then the other thing that it's going to do is help get rid of the toxins, because when we work out, we sweat. And sweat is another detox pathway for the body. So that's really important. Sauna, far infrared sauna can be quite helpful in that detox process as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then sleep too. We did, touching on sleep and how important that is. It's just integral to like helping to clean up your brain. And there's a lot of things that contribute to not sleeping, especially women who are in their 40s and 50s. They kind of tend to have, as they're going through menopause and they're experiencing that shift, their progesterone levels drop and they find themselves waking up to go to the bathroom a lot during the night. And progesterone is something you can get over the counter pretty easily, just through body creams that you can just add a little before you go to bed, and it can make the world of difference to how you sleep at night and to bringing balance to your hormones. Blood sugar balance helps you to sleep well at night. Being in the right temperature of your room can really help as well. We know about like not having our screens on right before we go to bed. So, and addressing those sleep challenges like sleep apnea to make sure that you're getting enough rest at night while you sleep. So, yeah.
It's I think also important to know that there is a rest cycle that the body needs to go through, but there's really a huge healing process that the body goes through during sleep time.
Yeah.
And when it has the right nutrients and the right hydration, it just optimizes that time of healing. So,
and you're detoxing while you sleep. And so, and your body does one or two things. It either detoxes or it digests sort of, and it doesn't really do both at the same time. So for those of us who are leaning into the kitchen and going to those wild forays into the fridge at 10 o'clock at night for that last little snack before you go to bed, or, the ice cream or whatever, then when you're supposed to be detoxing while you're laying down and sleeping, that is not happening. Your body's working on digesting what you put in there. So even the timing of our meals and those sorts of things matter as well.
Wonderful add to that. Yes. How common would you say it is that there are people living in this brain fog and don't even realize it? I mean, something that we've learned to deal with. And how common do you find that it really is?
I think it's actually far more common. I will say I did have, my journey and my career was with seniors for 12 years. So I saw it an awful lot in that situation. But those moments where you just walk into a room and you can't really remember why you were there, or forgot where you put the keys. We've been working on some of my stuff at the moment, and so they kind of shifted and moved around some of my hormones and took some kind of working on some of those pieces because I had a hysterectomy when I was 30. So that kind of messed that whole thing up, and we're constantly working on this balance, right? So they reduced my testosterone, and I took out the grater to grate some ginger. And I can remember what I did now, but I don't remember doing it at the time. I took the grater out, I set it on the counter, and then I went and spent 3 minutes looking through the closet for that greater, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was about to text my kids and I was like, okay, who did the washing up and put it away where it didn't belong? And looked over and there it was on the counter. And for love nor money, I can't remember taking that thing out of the cupboard. So it's disconcerting when we get those black spaces inside of our head and we can't remember what has happened. But I think those little things happen. And the thing that frustrates me as a practitioner and makes me sad is when we go to a doctor and say, hey, I feel this way. And I have nothing against doctors, so don't hear that the wrong way either, but just they go to a conventional practitioner, they say, hey, I feel this way, these things are happening, and they're told this is normal. This is normal. These are no, as long as you know, the line we always used to hear at the retirement community was, as long as you still know what your car keys are for, you're okay. It doesn't matter if you've lost them, as long as you still know what they're for, it's okay. And I don't think it is okay. I think it's the beginning signs that our brain is beginning to lose some of its function, and there's steps we can take to alleviate some of that. I've personally dealt with candida and mold exposure, thyroid that doesn't function particularly well, a gut that got trashed by all those doses of antibiotics. I have a history of depression and anxiety. So I meet people all the time that tell me that they're fine, right? My daughter always jokes that just means frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So we aren't really fine. And if we had a look at some of those pieces, then we would see that that's something that's correctable, right? We might not be off the edge of the cliff yet, but we're kind of on our way there. And in the conventional world, oftentimes that our disease process is simply defined by when we fall off the cliff. And then it takes a lot of energy and effort to get back to where you should be. Whereas we can make diet and lifestyle shifts and changes now that can address those issues. Your body is always talking to you. It is always trying to tell you, if you would just slow down long enough to listen to it. The rash that showed up on your hand that wasn't there a month ago, the headaches that pop up that you suddenly developed, or the ache in your back, or you name it, the little things you don't remember. Your body's just trying to tell you something. And so you need to slow down and take time to pay attention and listen to it and put those things right before you're so far, 1 degree off course ends up being a long way off course by the time you're 60 years old. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Wow. So I would be remiss if I didn't get you to share some information with us about some of your favorite things to help stimulate the brain, especially for women, in that space of dealing with menopause on either side and in between. And should there be different things for people at different ages when you're talking about these brain stimulators?
Yeah, so definitely used to see at the retirement community a lot more people being involved in doing things like Lumosity or Brain HQ or Brain Fit Life, where they're doing a lot of these brain exercises online to really challenge their brains and stimulate left and right brain. But the truth is that you shouldn't wait until you're 80 to start doing those exercises. The more you can do to keep your brain stimulated and active, the better you're going to be for a long time. So Dr. Amen talks a lot about activities that include hand-eye coordination and brain function, the way your brain moves. And one of his favorite exercises for that is table tennis. And just the oddest little thing that we don't often think about playing, but it really is good for that whole hand-eye coordination, and it's very good for the brain. But other things like that, like Tai Chi, where you have calculated movement and thought, dancing. And what I would say about any of these things is find the things that really bring you joy. So if going to the gym and pumping weights till, I've got friends who lift 150 pounds. If that does not bring you joy, find some way to exercise your muscles and your brain that does bring you joy, and then go do that. So if it's dancing, then go do that. If it's Tai Chi, go and do that. Keep learning. You stop learning, you die. Your brain dies. your brain is constantly looking for aha moments where it's connecting thoughts and patterns and ideas. And so challenge it, learn a new language, learn a new topic. There's so many online options for learning new things today. Learn a musical instrument that is hand-eye coordination. It's like a different language, right? We know the ones, the word puzzles, the games like Scrabble. We learned a new game while we were on vacation. So many people have played this, we didn't even know, but we learned how to play Mexican Train. So when we got home, we got this dominoes game, and we're playing dominoes last night instead of just watching TV and turning into brains into mush. You could spend an hour every day using your non-dominant hand. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand, style your hair with your non-dominant hand, write your notes with your non-dominant hand, and just make the other side of your brain work a little bit harder. So, and then the last thing I would say is always have purpose to your day. Even if your purpose today is to rest, that's okay. And it's really important to schedule in time to rest and to de-stress. That's so critical, because stress shrinks the hippocampus, which is your memory part of the brain. So you need to schedule that time in, but be purposeful about it. Have intention for your day every single day, because that's important for your brain as well.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I absolutely love it. What great advice. And as I look at and really have to bring our show to a close, you've given us so many wonderful insights and wisdom and just real practical things to do and be aware of. As we're bringing our conversation to an end, is there some wisdom that you believe is important to share and leave with our audience that you think is going to have a positive impact on us all?
Yes,
Please share.
absolutely. Yeah, we didn't talk. I mean, we talked about the things that we need to leave out as far as our food is concerned. So I just want to take a second and just tell you there are things that are beneficial. Things like your probiotics, foods rich in probiotics, your foods rich in healthy oils like omega-3s and your medium chain triglycerides, lots and lots of leafy greens, fruits and vegetables. And protein is so important for building the neurotransmitters. That's the building blocks that your brain needs to make serotonin and dopamine and those other neurotransmitters. So just wanted to make sure that we touched on that. And there are supplements that also help with that. So you don't have to go the medication route that if you don't want to. There are supplements that help in the same way that things like Aricept or Namenda would help, in the same way that benzodiazepines would help. There are supplements that do those jobs as well. So, and that's a whole discussion for another time, but just wanted to touch on those things. I think if I was thinking about this of just words of wisdom, and I think it would be that you have to take time. It takes time to invest in your health and make it a priority for your lifetime. Oftentimes we don't make that decision until it's some health crisis in our life and we have to make that decision. And that's the same, as my story. It's so many people's story. But I would highly encourage people to get their labs done annually. The number of people that I speak to, that is not a normal part of their life, and they have no idea what their baseline is. They don't know if their thyroid's always been functioning like that, or if their blood sugar has always been that high, or if their homocysteine has always been, that level of inflammation. So always get your labs checked. And then if something doesn't feel right, get checked out by somebody that you trust. And if you're not getting the answers that you need, persist. Find somebody who will listen to you. I can't emphasize that enough, because so many of the women that we work with have autoimmune disease, and they've been to 4 or 5 practitioners over the course of 5 to 10 years. Just got, something isn't right. Something isn't right. I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself. And it's okay to acknowledge that, and then go and seek and find the answers. And if one path doesn't work for you, it's okay to try another path. Because for me, conventional wasn't working, and I needed to try the more natural path. And it's been beautiful. It's been such a godsend. It has really turned my life around. But if you need to pursue something that isn't natural and it's the only fix for you and it works for you, go pursue, go find what fits for you and make it work. And then just be less judgmental of everybody and the journeys that they're walking on, because when you meet people, you don't know what they've already tried. You don't know how far into their weight loss journey they are. You don't know how bad their anxiety used to be. It just be kind, be kind, be kind, be gentle. This world needs so much of that. And just be patient and understanding with people, because we need that. It's never too early to start being kind, and it's never too early to start taking care of yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You are
Such
so very welcome.
beautiful words of wisdom. Jane, this has been such a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for all of the information, insight, and inspiration that you've given.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I want our audience to know that it would be amazing for you to comment below this video. Let us know if you have any questions, any insights that really came clear for you. And let us know what else you might like to hear about, what topic matter we might be able to bring to the show. Remember to share, because we would love for more people to have this information, and that can happen when we all are sharing. And if you're a health wisdom or a wealth practitioner and you'd like to share your knowledge and expertise with our audience to be in this conversation, reach out to me, PM me, message me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or you can email me at vlynn@p3academy.com, and let's connect. All right, everyone, we've got some exciting things coming up in future episodes, so do come back and join us next week. Same station, same time. Turn on your notifications so that you can be a part of all that we're doing. And please, once again, do us the favor of sharing. Thanks, and until next time, remember, be well, stay well, live, love, and be a bigger positive impact maker in your world. Thanks. I'm Lynn Hawkins, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.